All right. Well, in this week, we're going to focus, the content is going to focus on what's called set operators, which are how we can manipulate the results of our queries. And so I'll just do a couple examples of that real quick. And then I kind of wanted to shift gears and kind of cover a little bit more about the final project and kind of how you can set up kind of like your workspace for that as we kind of start getting more into some of the more technical requirements that we'll kind of start on this week. So anyways, let's just jump straight into some set operators. So set operators, I like to think of them because they're often confused with joins. Because joins can also like have an effect on which rows are returned, based on like if we're doing inner, left, or right. But the real reason we join data is so we can add columns, right? Like if we join customer to address, we're adding columns from address to each customer, is the main objective. When we do set operators, we're adding rows. So I like to think about joins as being horizontal. We're adding columns, and set operators are very vertical. Like we're not changing the columns, we're just adding data. So a good example, if we take a look at what's in our customer table, which I think we're probably already there, but we'll do it anyways. We'll take a look in customer. We know that there's a first and last name in customer and an email address. So we have first name, last name, email address. Now let's say that it's Christmas time and we want to kind of like send out let's say we want to send out like kind of like a e-Christmas card to all of our customers as well as our staff. You're right, just like something like this, just like, hey, thanks for being part of the video store rental family. Merry Christmas, something like that. What we can do, so we have customer data, but then we also have, select everything from staff. And you'll notice here that we have first name, last name, and email as well. So a couple things we can do here. We could join them, but the problem is we're going to end up with like 4 columns, and then we could do like a case statement to say, whatever. But that would just be overly complicated. So what we can do to make this real simple is, so we know we want the first name, the last name, and the email. Because let's say we're just going to run it through one of those little things where you like send them first name, last name, email, and they'll customize the email for the thing, or whatever. So we do that from customer. So there it is. And then we'll do the same thing here. So the one thing about set operators is that all of your data types of your columns have to be the same. And so realistically, it just makes sense. Your columns should be typically the same. Now they can have different names, different column names, and it'll just use whichever the first one is, but the data types all have to be the same. And then what we'll do here is we're just going to do a union all and run this. And now we have a list of everybody. And just to kind of make this like a little bit more clear so we can kind of see what's going on, I'm going to put customer as type. And then down here, we're going to just put staff as type. That way we kind of know which one is which, because we added this type so that you can see all the customers here. And then down at the bottom, we have our 2 staff members. Now, what I'm going to do is I'm actually going to add a customer. So I'm going to insert into customer, but I'm actually going to cheat. Let's use this customer. Copy to clipboard, and we're going to do an insert statement. And really what we need, so store ID, we're just going to do 1. We don't need this. First name, last name, email. We're just going to copy someone else's address. Create date is And then we'll just get rid of this. All right, so customer ID. So we don't need the customer ID. Store ID is going to be 1, first name, last name, email address, address ID. We were going to cheat and choose 1. Active is 1. Create date is current date. And then we're going to let it use the default value that they have set up for create timestamp. So now all I need to do is just add our first and last name and email address. So I'm going to do this. Now, what I want to simulate here is if we had an employee that's also a customer. So Mike Hillier, but we're just going to do Mike Hillier. And it's just Mike dot. Let's say that he on his consumer account uses Mike dot Hillier at sequilastaff.com. All right, so I'm going to go ahead and insert that, make sure it worked, which it did. So we just basically added Mike Hillier, who is a staff member, also as a customer. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to change this and I'm going to say order by, and we're going to order by last name, then first name. And you'll notice that, so we have all of our customers. And then when we get down here, you'll notice now that it's sorted by last name. Even if the staff land in the middle somewhere, it kind of sorts the whole thing. So now we're looking for Hillier. Now you'll see that he's listed twice in here now, right? One is staff, one is customer. Now let's say like if they had different email addresses, that would be fine. But let's say if they have like the same information, we want to not send them the same stuff. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to take off this because this would impact this. But let's say that, we're just getting first name, last name, email, but we don't want to send people two emails, like, because that would just be weird. So we're looking for distinct first name, last name, email. Now, right now I'm doing a union all, which means that when we run this, we're still going to get both. We're going to get 2 records for our friend here, Mike Hillier. But if I change this just to a union, we go find our friend here. Now you'll notice he's only there once. So a union, just like an inner join, will exclude, it will only include them once. So it only shows them, well, it'll show everybody, but it will basically remove any duplicates. So it will show only unique values between both sets. This being set 1 and this being set 2. So in this case, we're just taking the list from here, the list from here, and it says, okay, you want to union them, meaning just append, right? That's the way I also think about it. We're just appending to the list. But as we append, if anything matches the first list, we're just going to skip it because it's already there. So a union is a good way to say like, oh, I have these 2 sets of records. I want to combine them, but only show like 1 per each one. So a good example, if we wanted a list of anyone who'd taken CIT225 and CIT230, either one, we would use union because we wouldn't necessarily care who's taken both. Like, we could do a union all if we wanted to see who had taken one and the other with both of them. And then there's a couple other kind of operators. So there's an intersect, which isn't supported by MySQL, unfortunately. And then there's an accept operator as well. So in the accept, and or is I don't think this one works. Oh, it does. Okay, except why is that? I don't know if that's actually working. Huh. I wonder if it's just running this one.
Don't you need parentheses around each select for the except torque? Is that what it is?
I don't think so. Typically you don't. Let's see. Maybe I'm thinking of the wrong thing here. Yeah, I think it's just running the bottom. So yeah, so right now, I don't think except runs, and we can try this. Let's see if we can force it to do this. Yeah, there it goes. Well, this is a different thing. Well, that seems to be working. Maybe they added it. Let's try the other one. Let's try Intersect. Hey, it looks like they've added it, which is crazy. Because literally last term, this didn't work in MySQL. And as you can see, it's kind of interesting because it's actually Workbench is like throwing an error, like it's not parsing it correctly. But it's running, which is really, really interesting. That's news to me. Okay, so this works. So let's just talk about it. So if I do accept, or let's start with intersect. So intersect, so we did a union where we append. Intersect is just like our Venn diagrams on our inner join. You know, we can draw two Venn diagrams. You know, we can, or one Venn diagram. So, but instead of tables, this is data set A, which is the first one. And this is data set B, which is the second one. And basically what the intersect does is it gets them where they intersect. So we only get the ones that are in both data sets. So let's say we're BYU Idaho and we're looking for potential candidates to help us with a project that we have that requires someone to know a little bit of HTML and a little bit of SQL. And so we wanted to look for students who had taken both CIT225 and CIT230. We could write a select statement that gets all the kids that have, all the students who have taken CIT225, and then we could intersect that with all the students that have taken CIT230, and with the intersect, you know, find only the ones that have taken both, which is really nice. Okay, now let's do accept. So accept works kind of the opposite. So it's subtractive. So we're getting everything from the first list and we're subtracting everything from the second. So in this case, we're getting all the customers and we're saying, look, we're already going to do something for our staff members. So let's exclude them even though they're listed as customers, because, you know, we're going to get them like a gift card or something, you know, so we don't want to send them out this generic one because we want it to be a little bit more personalized or whatever. So we're going to get all the customers, but we're going to exclude any staff members. We could run this. I mean, correct, given that they have the same email. And if we go try to find our friend here again, HIJK, you can see that he is just not there. And that's because we're excluding him because he is also staff. So just to replay through all those again, union all is just add to the list. It doesn't care what's in them. It just will add to the list as long as it can, which means they have to be the same data type. And then we have union, which is the everything but it will remove any duplicates. So in this case, for our friend that is both customer and staff, he will only be listed once. And then we have Intersect, which basically finds the duplicates. So we'd find the one person that's in both data sets. And then we have Accept, which subtracts. So all the customers minus any staff members who are also customers. And so in this case, he simply won't show up. Does that make sense to everybody? Union all, union, intersect, accept.
Yes, thank you.
Awesome. Cool. And I believe that there is a similar little graphic for set operators that you can use that are really simple. And they say left and right, and I like to do it more like vertical, but this is kind of hard to see. I wish there was just a way to view the photo. Open image link. Open image in a new tab. There we go. All right. So yeah, you can see the union combines the rows from both queries. Intersect. I mean, this one's missing the union all, but because you can see this one's excluding the matches. So union all is just everything. Union excludes the middle. Intersect only gets the middle, and then minus, or in this case, accept, subtracts the right chunk. Cool. All right. Well, I think everyone's got that. This week's pretty light, nothing too crazy. So yeah, shouldn't be too wild. All right. So now what I'd like to do is kind of, like I said, go over some of the final project, so we can kind of get you guys set up in a good way, so you can start building like your actual kind of code and stuff. So anyways, what I have here is I have what I call like a family cookbook system. Basically, it's a way for, like, kind of my vision for this project is to have a website where, in fact, let me just show you my UI diagram. This will be a good example of like maybe a little brief, not 100% complete version of like what your PowerPoint presentation kind of should walk through, essentially. So the vision behind this is basically to have a website that will let you as a family create family cookbooks. So like me, I might be added on both my family's and then my in-laws families cookbooks. But essentially it's a way to kind of like keep a cookbook in a family and everyone can kind of contribute recipes. So anyways, there's you can come in here, create your recipe. We've all seen this before, where basically you can create a new recipe inside of a cookbook, give it a name, estimated prep minutes, a little description, and then you add steps. So each step has ingredients, so like step one might be, so it's really detailed. It's not just like written instructions. It's, step one, you're going to need, because I really like this because I'm OCD and not very good at cooking. I like when, like if I'm making, like pudding, it says like, okay, first you need this, this, and this, and your bowl. And so that way you can kind of get that stuff out, do those first instructions, and then kind of like clean up. I like to clean up kind of after each step of the way a little bit. And so anyways, you can kind of do those steps. And you can see here where I've put little brackets. That's basically where like data will dynamically fill. So like for each step that's in this recipe, it would be like sequence 1, 2, 3, and then each step would have a name. So like step 1, preheat oven. Step 2, mix dry ingredients. Step 3, prepare whatever. So that's kind of like my UI map. I don't really have it nearly as done as what you need for this project. I just kind of did enough to kind of showcase a little bit of it. And so here's my ERD. So you can kind of get an idea of what's going on here. So we have system users, which are basically just the people who are using our system. And you can see that there's a one-to-many relationship to a family because a single user can create. You'll see that when I hover over this, it's the owner user ID. So a single person can create multiple families. And then furthermore, once they create that family, I have this family member table that basically connects users to a family. So like, for example, you know, my wife could create my families as well as her families, and then she could invite me to both. So she would be the owner user of both of those families, and then we would be connected to each family through this table. And then down here, each family can have multiple cookbooks. So, you know, you could do a cookbook for, you know, baked goods, a cookbook for, you know, whatever. You know, you can kind of create cookbooks as you deem fit. And then obviously a cookbook is full of recipes. Each recipe has an author that is tied to, and it's obviously tied to a cookbook. I didn't make it so a recipe could be in multiple cookbooks, but we could if we added just like a recipe cookbook table, which would probably be a good idea because then you could share them, right? Like, anyways, but that would be a good idea. And then without duplicating them. And so that's probably something I could change. But then each recipe has a set of steps, and each step has ingredients because one step might use buttermilk and flour, and the next one use you know, cream cheese. So each step has its own ingredients. And then over here, I have this measuring unit table, which just kind of normalizes what you use for measuring units. So, because I didn't want people to type in cups or teaspoons or tablespoons, like I wanted it to be very normalized, meaning like very standard. Because some people might type out tablespoons. Some people might use the abbreviation, which just isn't very, you know, clean and neat. And so basically I build this table so people could put in the unit. So like the actual name. So for example, if I was doing teaspoon, I would write out teaspoon for the unit, and then the abbreviation would be TSP. And this one, the measuring unit, is something that's kind of like pre-made, meaning that, like, you know, people wouldn't be able to choose, or they'd be able to choose the measuring unit from a drop down. They wouldn't be able to type it in. So, you know, I'd have to think through all the different measuring units, and some of it might just end up being like items, you know, like, because if you need 5 eggs, there's not really like a measuring unit. So you just say, you know, like items, 5 eggs, items, or whatever. And then obviously the ingredient, which we could pre-fill those, so that way they could just choose from a drop down. And then the ingredient type to kind of help it. So that way, like if they're choosing a drop down, maybe they say, oh, want the, you know, dairy products and milk, you know, just kind of help keep that clean and neat, and organized. So that way, when you're searching for an ingredient, there's kind of a way to get to it. But anyways, that's my ERD. And so this is where, if you're up to speed, you should be at this point or close. And so what I want to show you now is how to go from here to actually having a database. So what we do is, when you're on your ERD, you can click up here on database, and we're going to use this thing that says forward engineer. And basically what we're going to do here is, this is going to basically build the database for us. So we can choose a connection. So I'm going to use CIT225. Oh, and one last thing, let's make sure. So if I click on, and I think I'm a little bit skew-wampus here. Let's try this again. Oh, no. Okay, that's just my screen. Anyway, so if I added the system user table somewhere here, it should show me the schema, I thought. gonna make this a little smaller so I can. Some of this is cut off, and I don't know if that's because it's. Anyways, somewhere here, I thought there's a place where the schema showed up, but maybe I'm wrong. Or is this it? Okay. Sorry. Properties, history. If someone finds that, let me know. There should be a place somewhere where you can choose like the schema. But anyways, I'm going to go up here to database. And I'm going to do forward engineer. I'm going to choose CIT225. We should already be able to connect. So then what I'm going to do is I'm going to generate. Nope. We can skip this, and I'm going to use this. So on the code generation, I'm going to select drop objects before each create object. I'm going to leave this. And then I'm also going to say omit schema qualifier in object names. But I'm also going to click this generate use statements. So I'm going to kind of just, skip these two. Everything else can remain default. The use statements are going to make it so it says like how we have to type use Aquila. It does that for us. But I omit the schema qualifier names in object names, and I'll show you why I do that. And then also why we drop it before each create. So now I'm going to hit next, type in my password, just school rocks. And we're just going to focus on tables for right now. So I'm going to hit next. Now you'll notice that this generates this code here. And you can save it to file or copy to clipboard. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to copy this to clipboard. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to come up here to, or let's save to file. Let's just save it to a file. So I'm going to go here to my documents, and I'm actually going to just create a new folder. Back here into documents, create a new folder, and I'm going to call this, I'm just going to do BYUI, create, and then I'm going to do new folder, and I'm going to call this family_cookbook. And I'm going to save this as, so kind of common naming with these files is this is the file that's going to generate all of our tables. So I'm going to name this schema.sql. Then I'm going to save it. And that just saved that file there, which is great. And I'm going to hit next. Type in my password again. And basically what it just did is it actually made the database for us. So if I come back over here, if I click on home and go back here and open up CIT225, you'll notice now that there's this family cookbook database and it has all my tables. So pretty neat. Because then if you make changes, you can always just come back over here and kind of do that same process. Now you can skip a lot of the code stuff if you want, but I'm going to kind of show you a little trick that I like to do. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go here to this file, and I'm going to say open SQL script. And if you look here, we're at the schema.sql, the last one the file we just made. I'm going to say open, and you'll see here that it is just our code. So now, obviously, you'll kind of want to do this, but like, let's say that you kind of have like one working set and you just want to try something different. So what I'm going to do is you'll see here it says create schema if not exists, and then it says to use. Well, what I'm going to do is I'm going to just add _dev to both of these. And this is the reason why I didn't have it use the schema qualifier before table names, because then I'd have to change it every time we have a table versus I can just do this right here. So now what I'm going to do is I'm going to come up here to the top of the file and run this one, which executes the whole script. And away it goes, hopefully. And I'm going to refresh this. And now you should see that we have this family cookbook dev. So just like that fast, I could create a copy of my all my tables. And so that way you can kind of goof around.
So does dev just stands for it's in development process?
Yes. Yep. Because typically, like in your, like, you know, because right now we're building from scratch, which to be honest is like a very rare thing. Most of the time, you know, you're dealing with like this database system that, you know, your whole lifeblood lives on, you know, that you have to be very careful with. You don't want to mess anything up in there. And so a lot of times, like what we'll do is we have these scripts that regenerate everything for us. So that way, if we just like want to test things, we can very quickly just spin up another instance. Like, so for example, let's say someone says, oh, hey, like, I don't want to interfere with what you're doing. I want to kind of like do my own. Can you spin me up another instance? And just like that fast, now we have another one. So that way, you know, you could have a few people that all kind of have like their thing going on at the same time, which is kind of neat. So I like to keep a copy of that handy. Now, the only thing you got to remember is that unless you want to change code manually, which is kind of like what I end up doing at a certain point because it's easier, just to rerun the file. You know, like if I wanted to say like, oh, I want to change this column name, which is what I'm getting here to next. Like, let's say instead of, like, let's say here, we have a family name. Like, let's say under this family, we want to change the family name just from name to last name. All right. So what's the last name of the family? Well, you know, if I was doing it this way, I'd have to come here and change it here and then forward engineer and all that. Where this way I can kind of quickly kind of operate, because now all I have to do is just do this and run it, because it has this drop. Remember, we selected that option to drop the tables before. Basically, this script will erase everything and then rebuild it. So if I were to look in here now, I could come into a lot of these and just basically, I think I just ran the wrong one. Let's refresh. There we go. And so basically it deletes it all and then recreates it. So you wouldn't want to use this on like production, or once you start putting data in your tables, you'll want to be real careful about this. But we're gonna kind of fix that, because the other thing that you're gonna do as part of your assignment is also build what's called CRUD statements, which are basically you get it, insert data into every table, and also have a couple like practice things of how you would select from it and delete from it, which is really kind of flows well with API kind of best practice. So we're going to open a SQL script. I'm going to come into here, and I'm going to open this crud.sql because I've already kind of done this in advance. So I open up this crud.sql file, and you'll notice that this is one that we're not really going to run as a script, but I like to put it in here as just utility. So you can see here for every table, so like system user, I have a create, which is just an insert statement, a read, which is just a select. I actually have two select because, like I said, it's kind of utility. So that way, if I ever want to use this as a subquery, I can just grab it real fast. I have an update, which is just, you know, updating any piece of information, and then a delete. So this is just kind of handy. So you need one of these for each of your tables. But to be honest, you're going to build most of these kind of along the way. So I usually kind of come in here, build these mostly for the insert, because you need data in every table anyways. So I come in here, write my insert statements, and then just kind of like do the other three real quick, just kind of because it's part of the deliverables. So anyways, I kind of just throw queries in there that I'm going to use a lot and then kind of finish it off. So the CRUD statement is one of your deliverables, where for every table you will kind of build, you know, these kind of like test cases almost. So then what I'd like to do is, like I said, with these insert statements, I like to put those all in one file. So I'm going to open up this other SQL script because I have this family cookbook seed. And so basically what I do is it just inserts all of the data into the table. Because remember, every time we run this script, it's going to delete everything. So I'm going to use this. It's going to put it into family cookbook dev. So let's run that. So it finished. And again, I shouldn't have closed it because if I go to open SQL script and open up my CRUD, I can test this by saying like, oh, what do I have in system user? There we go. I have Frodo Baggins and Samwise. You know, and I can say like, oh, or do we have families? And I do. I have, you know, one. And this just selects the family ID. But anyways, so we have the data there and we can test it with some of our CRUD statements. So from here, and what I do, the other deliverable for the file is a test case, and I kind of combine CRUD and test case into one. So you'll notice on each one of these, I have, well, down here, you'll see that I have like R.2, right? And C.1. Really that stands for, so like if you remember back to my UI map, basically what I did is I would align these. So like cookbook R.2, you know, I could go cookbook R.2. Here's the select statement that runs this, which basically gets all the cookbooks that are available to me through my families, right? So it joins the system user to family member to family and then to cookbook, because we don't want to show the whole world's cookbooks. We just want to show the cookbooks that are available to you to build the recipe. And then, so you can kind of see how I've labeled that, where, you know, cookbook R.2 is a select statement for read. Recipe C.1 is create, because save. So we create a recipe, and then so on and so forth. So anyways, I like to make this seed files, because that way, if I want to come back over here, switch back to dev. Now, if I run this, now this is the important part. If I run this script and then come back over here to say like, oh, you know, what happened to all the data I had in here? So let's select everything from user. You'll notice that it's empty. So if you run this one that recreates your schema, or if you recreate it through the EER diagram, all of your data is going to get wiped out. So this is probably the most important one, this seed one that just basically inserts all your data. You can just run that and it puts it all back in for you. So what I would do is I would start with the insert statements and just go table by table. And you kind of have to start at the one that's kind of like at the top, because you can't have a family without a system user. So you'll have to kind of go down the chain. But, you know, start at one and just start adding data to kind of fill your database, and put that record all those in one script and save it. So that way you can always come back and get back into it. Does that make sense?
Not quite, but we'll call you when we get stuck.
Okay. Yeah, really, it's just more like ignoring the schema one. I would say just put all of your insert statements, because we need to get data into those tables, but you don't want to have to rewrite these 100 times. And so what's nice is we have this script that we can just have it run through and execute everything sequentially, just to refill it, because the sad reality is that odds are you're going to find something that won't work. And so you'll probably want to go change it. And so then, you know, you don't want to have to rewrite all this. And then, so what I do is I put all this in one folder. You know, so I have like my CRUD statements, my whole model. I have the schema file, the seed file. I also have this file that just deletes all the data. I call it truncate.sql, my UI map, and then I have the Excalibur. So the last thing I kind of want to talk about here, I guess a couple of things. One of my favorite UI map tools is Excalibur. It's really kind of nice. It's free. It's easy. So you can kind of just, it's really nice for like wireframing, because you can just move really, really fast, right? Like just because it doesn't have to be pretty, it's just got to work essentially. And there's lots of different options. And what's nice is once you kind of have a kind of shape built, so like let's say let's say we want to just make it a little prettier. Oh, there's one because we're on a Mac or whatever. All right, so there's our little, screen. We can save this as a object or we can group it. So group selection and then add to library. And so that way, once we kind of hit our library, we can just say like, oh, there's a one screen. Let's add another one, and they're just right there. So that way you can kind of just create things like, so if we're going to show like a list of objects, like let's say we wanted to show a list and we have our little box, we have like a little thumbnail, we have some text, say title, and you can change your font, thank goodness, because I'm not really a fan of the handwriting stuff. Now we're going to make this large. Let's do another one. We're going to call this author. We're going to make this one like that. Let's just do that. And what we're going to do is we're going to make this.
So what we're doing when we do this is we're creating what it would look like if we had like the shell, so to speak, where it's the customer interface. This is what it would look like. Is that what we're trying to do?
Yep, exactly. So I'm just going to make like a little sun. That's supposed to be a picture. All right. But yeah, that's exactly what it is. So for your UI map, it's really just, you're going to build like what it would look like, one for context, and two, because everything we build on the database is going to connect to this. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to, again, group this selection, add to library. Because then what we can do is we can just say, bam, 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 bam. So that way, if you were going to have a bunch of these, we could throw it in there. So like, let's say we were going to build like a database that did news, right? Like, let's say news articles. We could build something like this that had, let's take and move all this down. And we're going to put featured stories. Send you to the back. Something like that. And it doesn't have to be pretty. But then what we would do is like, I would connect this section here. So like, we could draw a little line, and then like I'd put story.r.1. So that way you could like say, and like, let's just where's the color? Say this one. Right, so that's story.r.1. And then so basically that's like your UI map. Like, let's say this is all this does is get the featured stories. Then in your CRUD or your test cases, same thing. Like, let's just pretend that this is a new database. I would have something like this story. In the story, this is just the R, so read R.1. And it would be something like select title, author, image URL from story, where and it'll probably be more something like this. Story, left join, category C, st dot category equal category ID C dot where C dot name is equal to featured. It's like if you're putting stories in, and really we'd probably have to have one more, but I think you guys get the point. So that way you can kind of see, like, the whole point of this is so you can see, like, oh, this is the query that's going to provide all the data here to display this.
Do we have to have a UI for for the C, so the CRUD, the read, the update, and the delete? Is there a requirement for a UI for every piece of it?
And no. So kind of my recommendation, because I feel like everyone kind of like knows like when there's not enough. So like kind of my advice is like kind of like show the flow. So like for example, like if I was doing my cookbook recipe, my cookbook one, I would do one that would show, oh, this is how you obviously browse recipes. This is how you create a recipe. Because really that's about all there is. Now that would take, like for me, that would probably take, because I'd have one window to view the recipes. I'd have one screen that would show me how to create the initial recipe. And then I would have another screen that would show how you add steps to your recipe, and another screen that would have like the step detail. So, kind of just like a flow. Another example, like if you were going to do like an e-commerce site, like I would show a screen that shows how to browse products. I would show a screen that has like the product detail. Like if you're on Amazon, the product detail, so you can click like the add to cart button. I'd have a screen that shows your cart, and then I would have a screen that shows like checkout, so not everything. It's more just to kind of like show like the basic of your, like whatever product it is that you're building, just kind of like show like the main kind of like functionality of it, if that makes sense. Does that kind of make sense?
Yeah, I think so. So like we're pretend doing a bid for a company who wants us to build a database for whatever our ideas, and we're just giving them really quick, dirty, here's kind of what this thing's going to do, what it looks like, and what we're going to do for you.
Yep. Because really, like, if we were kind of like the one spearheading this, like, because really what this is for, kind of like how I would describe it is, we're pitching a product to someone, or at most we're preparing it for web development. Right. So, because they can make it pretty, and, usually we would have some sort of web designer like involved with this part of the process. But let's pretend we're full stack for a minute. So really what we're doing is we're getting it ready. So like the web developers, or even us, we have a nice clear documented path, so that way, when you hand this over to the web developer, whether that's yourself or someone else, all the database stuff is already planned, well thought out, taken care of, and aligned with the front end. So then that way, when we start to develop this, we can say like, oh, here's my containers. And when we get there, we don't even have to worry about the back end, because we kind of already have that defined. So like your web dev team would just be able to take that query that you've already defined, changes it a little bit. Because, in our case, we're going to do very like specific examples. Like, so for example, this one probably wouldn't change, but others may change based on, like, let's say that this had like a filter button to say like, oh, I only want to see today's top stories, you know what I mean? Or the last 10 days featured stories, or something like that. It would change the query, but at least they have an idea. So we just do like a test case is what it's called, which is, I'm going to write a query that will show you one example of many, just so you can see the query that's used and make sense of it, essentially. So it's really about handing this over to the web development team so they can focus on actually programming like the website, and not necessarily dealing with the database quite as much, if that makes sense.
That's helpful. Thanks.
Yep.
So really fast, I probably bit off more than I can chew. But I was talking to my manager about, hey, I'm going to be doing this project for this data class I'm in, and I think I'm going to use some data from work, and that's what I'm going to be doing for this project. He's like, oh, you know what I really want you to do is this. And so he's actually given me a project. So the thing that I create, he does want us to take it to the next level after I created it so that it's a usable database for work. So I have taken like the database warehousing and Java and that sort of thing. But when we're all done with this, could you just keep it in mind that I'm going to need you to point me in the next direction of how to make it usable?
Yes, and that's I have a couple older videos. Maybe I should have you watch, because and I guess, like, since we're almost out of time, I'll stop here and say, if you guys wanted to bounce out, like, this is about all I had. Because this may go on a little bit of a not necessarily tangent, but there's from here, like, when it comes to databases, like, we could take this code and change it to many other like database systems. So like, I'm a big PostgreSQL fan, because it doesn't have near the limitations of MySQL. And it has a lot of actually like really neat features that I really like. So I develop almost everything that I make on Postgres. And so we can switch that pretty easy, like, because everyone kind of like has their own like flavor, and also like different systems, even on the database side, like may have like a certain pro that like, oh, for this project we should use this because of X, Y, and Z. The same thing, if not even more so, on like once you get past the database, because like really for database there's like 4 variants, right? There's Oracle, MySQL, Postgres, SQL Server. Once you get past those, into this world that you're going to dive into, which is, okay, now I need that next layer of the tech stack. There is a lot of opinions and pro con weighing to do in that spectrum. So the first thing I would say is, if you're the one kind of doing the work for this solo, I would say 100% tailor it to a language that you know, mixed a little bit with a language that is going to be easy longevity, able to maintain and find help with. So for that reason, myself personally, I use a framework called Flask. So Flask is built on Python. It's super easy to install or run. Like, if you're containerized, like you can, what's the Haiku? Is that one of those things? You can spin up these really easy. So I really like Flask. I have built a few systems on Flask. My main one being this one. This is like one of my little like pet projects here. Let's see if I can remember my password. Bear with me 1 second, because I think as I do this, I'll just keep talking. So basically, Flask is it's a framework, because you can't just like write HTML and have it pull from a database. If that makes sense. It has to be some sort of like application layer. And so that's kind of where it gets a little bit tricky, is because you have to kind of have it, set up to where you can kind of like build that out, because there has to kind of be like this middle layer. Now, what a lot of people do is they'll just build the API. And that's another reason I really like Flask, is because you can use it for both. So here's an example of one that I built, which basically helps me and my dad manage cows. So these are all of mine. So I have like not very many. I have 11 cows and a couple dogs, I guess, in there. But I have a few cows, and basically I use this to track expenses because I am very much like the economics of agriculture. So this is all built on Flask. And so what I like about it is it's very page based. It works well. It's Python, so there's just unlimited possibilities. It connects well with databases, so on and so forth. So, but I kind of like this because I can. That one doesn't have any.
Okay, and so then we could easily connect up our MySQL that we've created in with Flask using Python, because I haven't done any Python at all. I've just done Java and SQL.
And when you say Java, do you mean like actual Java or JavaScript?
JavaScript.
Okay. Yeah. So like I said, a lot of that, like if you're familiar with JavaScript, there's a lot of great frameworks for JavaScript that I've used. In fact, one of my favorite ones, I don't know if I would recommend getting on the bandwagon because it's Google, and I don't think adoption has been as well. But like this portion of this is actually running on Angular, which is another framework. So really I have like a framework within a framework, but Angular is another one. And then and I'm sure other people, but React is another.
Yeah, see, React and Node.js.
Node.
I just see people posting. I don't know what it is, but I see people posting React and Node.js are pretty big ones.
Yeah, and I think if I were to like have to learn a framework from scratch all over again, like if you're set on JavaScript, which definitely has its pros, I would lean heavily towards Node. Anyways, like I said, there's a lot of like if you do Node versus React, like there are people that will like go to their, I mean, it's like politics. So there'll probably come a point where you just kind of need to pick. I do have a couple tutorials where I actually go through, because in the past, like I think I've actually done a couple of these where I'll build out a whole connection in Flask. Because like I said, it's super easy. I really like it because it's just super, super easy. At least
I like easy.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay.
Because anyways, so I'll if you shoot me a message on Teams, I'll shoot you over that video. I think I did it in a couple of videos, but anyways, like I said, a lot of it just depends on like what you want to do. PHP, I don't know if you know PHP. It's a dying language, but like it's probably the simplest. It's the least secure for the same reason, but that one's super easy as well. But I wouldn't recommend it for those.
Well, I work for the church, so they're all about security. So
Yeah,
probably that. So sweet. Well, thank you so much. I got to head off and take a kid to Mutual, but thank you so much. I just want to make sure that this was doable and I can, keep growing from here. So thank you.
Yep, for sure.
Can you put that Excalibur or whatever you called it, that framework in the chat, or like put it in the Teams or something? Just so we can use it.
I will throw it here, and I'll also put it in the Teams.
Thanks.
Yep. All right. Well, that's all I had for the week. So I hope you guys all have a great week. If you have any questions, let me know.
I do have a question, but it's more just with my database that I'm creating for the final. So huge Star Wars geek. I was going to see if I could do like a database that correlated with like the characters, like the races, the planets, the vehicles, all those type of things. Could I run it by you to see if it's valid enough to be able to use for that final?
Yeah.
project?
Do you mind if I keep the recording going? Because sometimes
Sure.
people really like to see this, because most of the time they have like the same questions,
Yeah, no, for sure. I'm okay with that.
Okay. Yep. Let me make you a co-host. All right. Yep. Should be good to share.
Okay. Bring it over here. Come to Zoom, view options. Share screen. Sure. So here's my diagram that I've got so far for the way that I'm thinking about it. So most of it does hover around the character itself, because I guess that is the main point as to where I'm doing it.
Yeah.
So I've got, there's the character and then there's the vehicle, and I did a many-to-many relationship between these two because, Luke Skywalker has an X-Wing and was in the Millennium Falcon, but then like Han Solo has the Millennium Falcon. So there's like the many-to-many. That's why I did that route. And then there's the movie appearance. So like when the person like shows themselves, and I did that they could be in an episode, like a TV show or an episode, as the option there. And then for the character too, the affiliation. The affiliation's kind of more like, you got your bounty hunters, you've got your empire, you got the Galactic Republic, all those different kind of affiliations. So that's what that is. And there's again another many to many, because you could have a bounty hunter that's also part of like the separatist, right? You got Jango Fett as like that example.
Yep.
And then from the characters to the race is just a one to many, because you could have, I guess that one shouldn't be that. It should be like a 1-to-1. I guess this is where kind of like me verifying with you is this is all making cohesive and it's making sense so far.
Yeah, and I think so the only thing I would do there, yeah, like you said, I would just take character ID out of race and just put race ID in character. So that way it's a one-to-many relationship, meaning a race can have multiple characters.
So, and again, that was a 1-to-many.
Yep.
And then I go race to characters. No, I gotta do the vice versa.
Well, I think you'll need to add a column to character for like race ID. Yeah, it can just be an integer.
Could a person be mixed raced, or is it something else? I know nothing about Star Wars.
I mean, theoretically, yes, but not. I think in the world of Star Wars, it seems like
it's either you're one or the other. Because
Yeah.
there's even like a part in the Clone Wars, like the TV show, where a clone goes and has a child with a Twi'lek, but the child comes out as a Twi'lek. So
Okay. Yeah, I know nothing about Star Wars, so
yeah, I don't really know that there is like a cross. Like, I mean, they do have those moments, but I don't think like the child comes out as like a crossbreed or like a mix of them.
Yeah.
But I mean, that's a good point to put.
yeah. Especially for this, because like most characters just have like a race, so it's
Yeah. So
part of
then
their
just
identity.
like, I guess I don't need that. I need that to not be null. But I don't need this to be a foreign key then for race, do I?
Yeah, so it will. So then, yeah, race ID. From race, it will be a one-to-many relationship, meaning like if I'm like you said, if I'm looking at it from a race perspective, multiple characters belong to a race essentially.
Okay. I don't know why I created the character ID twice. Guess I could delete that one. Is it because I have my character ID here?
Yeah, I think it's when you drag those, it created it for you, so you can delete that one out of there as well.
Delete this.
yeah, when I drag mine, I've got 50 million different IDs I had to delete out because every time you drag them, it does crazy stuff. So there's a lot of cleanup.
Okay,
There we go.
so can remove that now. Okay, so back to it. So there's the race relationship, and generally, like we'll take Wookiees for example. So you've got Chewbacca, he's a Wookiee, and he goes to the planet of Kashyyyk. So there's like that correlation. So that's kind of where I had like this trail right here go. But then like each character is also from a planet. So like the race and the planet, the system. So you've got like the Outer Rim, where you got some of those planets that are out in that area. You've got different sectors that hold different planets. So that's where I had like a 1-to-1, because really only one planet can be in one system, and well, I guess would that be a 1-to-many because the planets there's multiple of them, but one system. Okay.
Yep, exactly.
So this one I need to update. So then it's a 1-to-many, so 1-to-many.
Or I think just flipped.
Oh, I just flipped it.
You have to click on the mini table first when you do your
gotcha.
joins.
There we
And
go.
then this here, I don't need character ID there because it's more planet base, not there. So system, there's that dupe right there. Yeah, planet name, population, and then it's got the race. I was thinking I could do either language in planets, or should I do language and race just so that it has more here than in the planet? Because in planets, really, I'd say you could probably speak multiple languages in the planet because there's so many people, like Coruscant, right? The place where the Jedi are. There's so many people from all over the planets at Coruscant, so that's like really Coruscant doesn't really have like a
Yeah.
specific language. So probably in race is where I should put language.
Yeah, that's probably what I would do is like, yeah, you can call it like, like language. Yep. I think that'd be a good place to put it.
So
Okay.
just looking at your relationship between character and systems, one character doesn't belong to many systems, do they? Isn't that like galaxies?
So I would say galaxies is kind of like the system because you got the
Right, and
different.
you got one character belonging to many different galaxies. Right, that's the one to many going up.
Yeah, so what I would
Yeah.
do here, what I would do here is I would just delete that relationship. And then what I would do is I would one of two things. You can have like if this just defines a character's race origin, then I
Mhm.
think just like this it's set up, like it doesn't need to circle back like you said,
To a system.
Chewbacca is on
Kashyyyk.
Kashyyyk and it's in which, whatever system. But if we wanted to like circulate, like kind of make it a little more circular, what I would do is in character, I would add something like, like base planet or,
Hometown kind of a thing.
home planet, or like, living at planet essentially. That's like just an ID. So you can do home planet, change that to an int, and then just connect that to the planet. And then what's cool is then you can kind of tell both stories, where you have essentially like I could say like, oh, Chewbacca's from where is he from, which planet, which system. But then I can also say, oh, but like, is he living on the Cloud City or whatever with Han
Lando.
Solo, yeah,
Or-
or
yeah.
whatever. You can kind of like that way you kind of have both, but they both tie up to the system essentially.
Gotcha. But then I this here just tied it as a 1-to-1 for the character for the home planet. Do I need to then at that point add a home planet ID here? Is that what I should be having it say?
No,
But
and I think in this case it should be many to one, like many planets to,
so
or many characters to one planet.
Yeah,
that's what I was gonna say. Yeah, one planet contains many characters.
that makes sense.
Yep.
But then that brings over all the race in the system
And I think in this case, like, because it auto generated this one, you might have to go in and manually define, since home planet is like custom, or I guess rename it after you've created it. Because like I think it has just planet's ID, because it's not actually connected to like home planet. So you can either delete home planet and then just rename the other one. That's probably what I would do.
yeah, so just delete that. And then instead of it being planet's ID, I could just say like home planet.
Yep.
And I don't know what happened to your relationship, but your race to character relationship's not there. So now your race is connected to planet, not your character.
Yeah. So that one's a 1-to-1, right?
That one should be
Or did we say it
one
was
to
a
many.
1-to-many is what it was?
Yeah, most of the time it's a little weird because like, a lot of times we think like, oh, one character has one race, but really we're looking at it like holistically, where and I think just opposite of that.
So now in this race, sorry, you can keep going.
Yeah, so basically like, we think about it like one race record ties to many characters, or many characters are going to use one race record.
Right. Because the 1-to-many is, yes, there's one character that could be like a Wookiee, but then there's another character that could be a Wookiee, and that's where that many relationship comes in.
Yep, exactly.
So
So yeah, so I think you still got to swap that one between race and character, and then now race has character ID, which means only one character can be in one race essentially.
Jeez.
You're starting, you can see why I just opt just to like use like the, I just build them manually because
Did I do that backwards again?
I
did.
Click on the menu.
The one.
There we go.
I don't know why that shoved this all the way down here now.
And then in your characters, you got race ID 1 and race ID and race ID 1. Just got delete 1.
And that deleted the wrong one.
Did I delete?
So, if you click on the foreign keys on your,
there we go. I re-added it. That was number 1. Did I need that?
Yeah. So I think you can delete just race ID plain because I think that's the one that's broken. Yeah.
Okay, that was it. So then here I need to fix that.
There we go.
Because then it's race ID.
Yep.
To race ID. And then home planet to home planet, and then systems there, races to that.
Yep.
Sheesh.
And the only other thing I would change here is because movie appearance has character. What I would do is I just rename movie appearance to like I would just rename that like I don't know if there's like a common name for like film and TV show. You could call it like a title. So I'd like name it title and then like do title ID, title name.
In more of a sense to keep it shorter, or
yeah, well, because like the way it is, like the other table's fine, but like unless you like did put like movie names in the episode name, which I guess in Star Wars like it is episode whatever
1, 2, and 9,
yeah.
And I did do that, but I felt like I wasn't doing that right. I felt like more of the table I was building wasn't like I was building the table, but putting episode 1, episode 2, episode 3, that was like the data, not the column of what it was. And so I felt that was wrong.
Yeah. And so like then you could have what I would do here is I would have like type. So type would actually be where you could put like movie or TV show.
That's a better point. So for me to set it, help remind me of this. For me to set the options, right? Option 1 and option 2.
I think it's enum.
That's the enum. It's not the blob.
Yep. And that basically stands for enumerated, which I personally hate these. Because one thing we can do, because I mean we won't talk about it for a couple weeks, but you can build like checks, which basically you can keep it a var chart and then just say like, oh, it has to be either film or TV, or you can build another table that just has like content type essentially. But either way is fine. Like if you want to do a new, that's 100% okay.
That would be the binary, right? The binary type is the yes no checkbox.
If you were just gonna have it be like checkbox for like a movie or not, then
right.
But this will work great because it really is like a couple options. So
yeah. And then because like some of these characters that I might even list in here, they might not have already had an appearance. Like they could be from a comic or something, and that's where that type of a character wouldn't have an appearance. I guess that's why I'm not requiring these two.
Yeah, and that's one reason why I prefer to split, like instead of doing an enumerator, I like to just split it into its own table. Because like, let's say we hit that point where, we have a character that's in a comic, we would have to change the code of this table in SQL. So actually like change the structure of the table versus just add a record. Where if we like split it into its own table to say like, title type, and have like a key to it. Because then we could just insert a record for comic. But like I said, for this exercise, it's just kind of like whatever how deep, you know, because you can take this rabbit hole as long as you'd like, you know, forever.
Oh yeah. I've already had to go like, okay, I probably shouldn't add weapons because then it's like I gotta tie it to every single
Yep,
character. And it's like if
exactly.
they ever touched that weapon, that could qualify. So I was like,
Yep.
that one's the rabbit hole part where I was like, I'll avoid that one
Yep.
and just leave it at that. But
That's
it's
most
like,
people's problem, is like they bite off a lot, you know, because they're
mhm.
you know, which is great, but yeah, you'll be
And-
happy that you kept it minimal.
Right. And remind me, with how many tables do we have to pass with the final?
10.
Remember that
So
was
you're
one of
good.
the things. So 10. So
Yep.
1,
10.
2.
Yeah.
Okay, cool. So that's like a perfect amount. So then that works for me. I can set it up that way. And then with what you were showing today, like I just got to go create kind of like that wireframe of like how I would picture this to be displayed on like a website, right?
Yep. The wireframe, and then you can just in like as far as like order of operations, probably what I would do is I would start putting data in first.
Right.
Just because like you know, and it depends. Like if you're still like thinking like I'm a little shaky about what my end goal is, maybe do the wireframe first. But like this one is pretty straightforward, which is nice. And so I would just throw like data in. So like in this case, put in a character, you know, and one thing you may want to do, or in this case, really what you'd probably want to start with is a home planet ID, home planet's ID. Is that required? Like, is that not null? You may want to set that to be nullable.
Which
Just
one? Sorry, the planet?
inside character.
Oh,
Home planet's ID. I would uncheck that from being not null, just because otherwise it's gonna like, I guess you could do it, because really where you're gonna have to start is you're gonna have to start with race and then planets. Or really you're gonna have to start with race and system, then build planets, then build character, and then you can kind of branch out from there. But that'll be
thankfully with this one and this one, it's like they are just numbers. And then at that point, apply it to these and just have to remember what those numbers are at that point. But I probably will first create like a full on like spreadsheet or something. And like you showed a lot earlier of putting those all in and kind of getting your tables set up in that way so that it just flows nicer when it comes to it.
So on his many relationships, so he has the helper tables, movie appearance has characters. I don't remember. Do you build the title and build the character and then feed the many to many table, or do you do the many to many table and then feed the other two tables as far as inserting the data?
So like in this case, you'd have to build. So like we'd have to insert into title and insert into character, and then connect them essentially by inserting into.
Okay. So you do your many to many helper table last after you feed the data and other two surrounding tables.
Yeah.
Okay.
Exactly. And I would probably just like, if you want the has character, but you could almost just rename that table like title appearance, whichever you prefer. And then one other thing that I would recommend while you're still like in here doing this stuff is on all of your primary keys, I would set those to auto increment. So like on title ID, that little box that says AI, set those to auto increment. Because then that way you don't really have to, because at least what I do when I'm inserting data, it's just nice to not worry about it. And then as another little trick, what I do is I start with my CRUD statements with the select. So like I'll do select character ID where first name equals Chewbacca, right? Or whatever it is like you're doing. Because then that way when I'm in development mode, I don't care what the IDs are. I'll just paste that subquery in. Like, so if I want Chewbacca, so like for example, if I'm inserting that I want to put Chewbacca in Return of the Jedi, you know, I'll just say, you know, insert into title appearance, you know, title character ID values, title, select Return of the Jedi, or select title ID from title where title name equals Return of the Jedi. Bam. And then for character, you know, that select character ID from character where first name equals Chewbacca. Bam. So then that way, if those IDs change, like, you know, like if you delete from one, then add it again, like, you know, he's all of a sudden got a new ID. So unless you delete everything, and recreate it in the same order, those IDs change. So that's why I usually start by like, a lot of times like I'll start like one by one. It's like if I build race first, I'll do insert into race where race name equals Wookiee. And then, obviously so once I have that built, then I'll immediately write the select statement for the C and CRUD, select race ID from race where race name equals Wookiee. And like I said, I keep that CRUD statement. As I do that, I keep that CRUD statement handy because then you can very quickly just copy that and paste it in where you want them.
Right.
For the auto increment, you had an auto increment, but that also has a thing for unique ID, which by definition is going to be unique. You have to select that or not. Just wondering if you get points taken off if you're not.
No. And to be honest, like I don't really look that close.
I was about to say, I was like, that's like a very detailed thing to look towards.
And like you said, by definition, the primary key comes as unique. So yeah, you won't need to check it. Even if you were like going to do it, for a real thing.
Okay.
But yeah, awesome. No, yeah, this looks great. Yeah. Fun one.
Okay. I just have another quick question about the final. Is there like a location that I could go to look to see if like, if you should be at this point with your final project at this week? Is there anything like that that's available?
Yeah, so every week in the announcements, I kind of like have a section there for final project where I say like, oh, this is where you should be. And by this time, like basically this week, we're going to switch to do this essentially.
Gotcha.
The nice thing is where we're at now. So starting week 5, and I can't remember if it's by the end of week 5. I think by the end of week 5, you should be wrapping this up and then switching gears into the CRUD statements and test cases. Really from this point on, it kind of like all melds together because you could do like all the code first on the UI or vice versa. To me, like it kind of makes sense just to kind of like work on them all. So I kind of like swing back and forth between them. But yeah, so if you check the announcements, I kind of have like a timeline laid out each week where I post those.
Okay, cool. I'll just go back and recheck those and we'll use those as my gauger before I need to be.
Yep. No, so far you're right on track. And the nice thing is like this one's actually a nice one because it's like still using everything, which is nice because you can kind of like well, really they all use them, but this one's simpler. And because you're like you said, you're into Star Wars, like understanding the data and the business logic behind it is like key. So it'll just make more sense to you. It'll all come together.
Yeah, well, and it's like I too was like looking at like Star Wars, right? They actually have like a full-on website that already has kind of like the setup for me with all the data, but it's like, yeah, like I already know a lot of these characters, like where they're from, little backstory about them, but I like using this as like a way to get like data because that's like an affiliation, right? The Bad Batch, so I can throw all these characters into that, and so it's like there's sources out there that can help make it easier for me of like what exactly I need to put for the data, and I'm not just doing guesswork.
Yep.
Is there a minimum data set per table or no?
No, my rule is at least one record per table.
Okay.
Because obviously it has to work. So an empty table likely won't work. But that really.
If you just get a handful per table, you're good. You don't have to do like 100 records or 1,000.
And I don't even like. Yeah, I don't even care about a handful. Like I said, as long as there's one. Like if all we did here was put in Chewbacca in all the relevant data, like, and even if you didn't have all of his title appearances, like I really don't care. It's really just about like proof of concept.
Okay.
I guess to further just ask and verify on that, is there like a limit on the amount of data that we have put into these tables? So like meaning for character, I've got to have like 50 to 100 characters that are placed in here, and then really just the other tables are whatever's comes with that data piece. Is there like a limit that you're looking for with this final project with that?
No, like I said, just one.
Okay.
Just one, like, and really like where I'd lay it out is just like, where character is your base, I would just like do one character. He's one race. So like a lot of these is just going to be one. you know, but you know, maybe for like the affiliation, you know, but like because you have the affiliation, or sorry, like the title appearances, like, you know, maybe put them in like 2 movies or something, you know, something like that.
And I guess I was already thinking of like putting at least 5 people or something like that.
Yeah, I mean, because like basically my minimum requirement is 1. You know, because some of these get like insanely hard. So like really it's more just about being cognizant that some people will struggle more with the design phase. And so I don't want to like say like, oh, you know, struggle through this design phase, which is probably the most important, and then also spend all this time, you know, being a data clerk and just inserting data, you know. So like so really that I just kind of do it more like out of cognizance, but you're free to like kind of do like what you want. I would say just like do it until it's not fun anymore, essentially. You know, at least have 1 per table, but if you want to do more, do it till it's not fun anymore.
Sounds good. I had another question, but I just spaced it. But if it comes back, I'll just send it to you in Teams.
Yep, sounds good.
So cool. That's everything that I've got. Appreciate you letting me go over this and just making sure it is valid enough, because that was my worry. I was like, this is a little too easy, but at the same time want to make sure it is just a valid
No,
work.
yeah. And I guess because I know there's only the 2 of you left, if anyone on the recording's watching this, feel free, like just send me a screenshot of your ERD. It's real easy for me just to like highlight just those few little changes. Or, you know, feel free just to post it on Teams, and I'm sure other students will be happy to like talk through. Like the more we can do this like out in the open like this, I think it helps everyone, right? Because like, you know, Star Wars is something most people understand. So, you know, it just helps make sense. So thanks for sharing. And if something else comes up, just let me know.
Awesome. Of course. Thanks.
All right. Thank you.
Yep. Thank you.
Have a good night.
Yep. You as well.